Exactly. Exactly. Takes you back to your primal roots. All right. So this morning, um, we want to finish up one last little topic in the finance chapters before we move on to chapter 17, which is valuation. So the last thing that we have not talked about in the finance chapters is how to qualify a buyer for a loan. Now, this is not something that you're going to need to know how to do practically in the real world. You're never going to actually qualify a buyer for a loan. I question why we have to teach it to you, but the answer to that is because they test it. So that's what we do. Now, I want you to, before we even start talking about the math of this, I want you to wrap your head around the idea of what we're trying to accomplish. Put yourself in the shoes of the bank. You are the lender. You are trying to qualify a buyer for a loan. You want to know that they have the ability to repay that loan. We're not talking about their credit score at this point in time. We're simply talking about their ability to repay. What do you think is going to be the biggest factor in a borrower's ability to pay back a loan on a monthly basis? Their income. And what would probably be the second biggest factor relates to their ability to pay it back? Their debt. What their other debt looks like. And that's exactly what we are taking into account when we qualify a buyer. We're taking into account how much of a house payment it is that they're trying to qualify for, how much income they actually have on a monthly basis. We use monthly income when we do this kind of an equation, and how much other debt they have. Now, let me open up the math formulas here because I want to take a look at the formulas for qualifying the buyer and explain to you exactly how we're going to use this. So, when you look at this formula, on the top of the T-bar, we have maximum affordability, or just affordability, okay? This is the amount the buyer can afford to spend. Now, what that entails is going to be different whether we're using the back end or front end ratio. We're going to talk about what those mean. Whenever you do a buyer loan qualification, you're going to be working with two different ratios at the same time. It's a double-sided test. You don't have to qualify one way, you have to qualify two ways. So we're going to check their income against a couple different ratios. We check it against usually a 28% ratio and usually a 36% ratio. There's always going to be two different ratios, some percentage of their monthly income. And the reason we check it two different ways is because one way we want to check just how much they plan to spend on their house payment. We want to make sure that they're not going overboard with their house payment. So what's the best way to make sure somebody doesn't spend too much on their house payment? Put a cap on it, right? You can't spend more than. And the rest of that sentence is 28% of your monthly income on your house payment. Does that make sense for everybody? So in order for a buyer to qualify for a loan, what we would do is look at the payment for that loan and make sure that that they weren't spending more than 28% of their monthly income on that house payment. Is everybody with me so far? Okay? Good. But we also have to check what we call the back end ratio, the other side of the coin. And the other side of the coin doesn't just involve that house payment. The other side of the coin involves their house payment and their other debt. So visually, if you kind of think of it this way, uh-oh, my pen's not working. Why is my pen not working? Well, I guess I'm going to have to draw it on the board. My pen's not working today. I may need a new battery. So think of two buckets. We've got a 28% bucket, and we've got a 36% bucket. Okay? Well, 28% of what? Income. Specifically, monthly income, right? So both of these buckets are just income buckets. So we want to figure out what is 28% of our monthly income, and we put that amount of money in this bucket. And then we also want to figure out what is 36% of our monthly income, and we want to put that amount of money in this bucket. Is everybody with me so far? Good? Yep. Yes, no, maybe? Yes, ma'am.
And the 20% and 36% vary?
Can those numbers vary? In the real world, indeed they can. On the test, indeed they won't. Okay? On the test, these are the numbers you're going to see. The principle applies no matter what the numbers are, though, because different lenders are going to have different qualifications. Different loan programs are going to have different qualifications. Okay? So again, the reason we have two different buckets of money is that we are saying two different statements at the same time. Number one, the buyer cannot spend more than 28% of their gross monthly income on their house payment, on their housing expense. Okay? Has everybody got that statement? If you don't understand that statement, you're not going to understand the other side of it. So, go ahead. Sure. Housing expense is going to be everything related to that house payment. Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, HOA if there's an HOA due. There. That's what's got to be paid out of the 28% bucket. So what we're saying is 28%. If you take 28% of my monthly income, for every $100 I make, you put $28 in this bucket. That better be enough to pay my house payment. Because if that's not enough to pay my house payment, do I qualify for the loan? No. If it is enough to pay for my house payment, do I qualify for the loan? So far, maybe, because the answer to do I qualify has to be a yes on both sides, and we're only halfway there. Does everybody understand? So, just as a demonstration, if we say 28% of our gross monthly income, well, let's say we have a $4,000 a month gross monthly income. Let's just take that. Y'all got calculators. Give me 28% of $4,000. So we have a $4,000 a month income. That's $1,120 in our 28% bucket. Right? So how much can we afford for a house payment? $1,120 so far. If the house we wanted to buy was going to come with a $1,200 house payment, do we qualify for the loan? If the house we wanted to buy comes with a $1,000 house payment, do we qualify for the loan? Yes. You see how these work? For now we do, right? That's how these qualifying ratios work. As long as our housing expense is less than the amount of money in this bucket, or equal to, then we qualify. We just can't go over. If we go over, we don't qualify any longer. So far, so good? Now, we also have to check this side. What is 36% of our gross monthly income? $1,440. So, on this ratio, what we're saying is that we cannot spend more than $1,440 on our housing. Start the same place we started over here, plus our debt. So we can't spend more than $1,440 on housing and debt combined. Does that make sense so far? So now let me ask you this question. If we were doing the maximum house payment that we qualified for on this side of $1,120, Somebody said, you qualify for a house payment of $1,120. That would only be true if our debt were less than, what, $320 a month? Does everybody see that? Because the difference between these two, 1440 minus 1120 is $320, correct? So that's our max debt payment to still qualify for an $1,120 a month mortgage payment. Everybody good on that? Let me ask you another question. What if our debt was more than $320 a month? Then what's going to happen? We either don't qualify or we got to do what? Get less house. So the only way we can get back into qualifying if our debt is more than $320, this number here, the house payment's got to do what? Go down. It's got to shrink. Or pay off debt. Or somehow we've got to change these numbers. Does that make sense? Because the number we can't change is the percent of our income. We can't change those numbers. So the only numbers that we can play with are here, the house payment, and here, the debt. That's it. And which one of these ratios do we have to qualify under? Both. We have to check both. Everybody good with that so far? We've got to check both sides to make sure we qualify. So we're always going to be working with both the 28% ratios and the 36% ratios to decide if a borrower qualifies. So now if you look back at the T-bar, if you're trying to determine how much somebody can afford, what is the T-bar going to be doing? But that's what maximum affordability is. So what does the T-bar say you're going to be doing? Income times the ratio, right? So if you're working with the 28% ratio, it would be monthly income times 28%. And that's going to give you your affordability. Maximum affordability. Does that make sense? Yes?
It's all based on the gross monthly.
Always based on gross monthly income. And gross means before taxes have come out, right? And monthly is obviously not annually. So if they give you annual income, what would you have to do with it? Divide it by 12. Divide it by 12. And the reason we use monthly income here is because it's a monthly house payment. So now let's talk about this word debt. Debt is anything that has a structured monthly recurring payment that has an interest rate associated with it. Okay? Debt is not your electric bill. Debt is not your grocery bill or your gas or your cable bill or your phone bill. Debt is student loans, car payments, credit card bills. Those are the ones you're going to see on the test. Could they throw something in there like an electric bill to throw you off? And if you see an electric bill, what are you going to do with it? Ignore it because it doesn't relate to what we're trying to do here. Everybody good with me so far? Now let me ask you a question. If you, let's say, and we'll just stick with our same example we've got here, okay? Make $4,000 a month. We figured out the most we can spend on a house payment is what? $1,120. Most we can spend on housing plus debt is how much? $1,440. So let's say they tell us we have a car payment of $400 and credit card bills of $150 a month. Well, Ashley said they don't qualify. And that's true if they're trying to qualify for a house payment of $1,120. But they're not asking us, do they qualify in this question? They're asking us for how much do they qualify, for what would they qualify. So to figure out for what would they qualify, what are we going to have to do?
Subtract that from the housing and debt.
So what we have to do is figure out how much is left for just housing over here, right? Does everybody follow that?
Yes.
Okay. So they've got $1,440 to spend, and they're spending $400 of it on a car payment and $150 of it on a card bill, what do we come up with? It's $1,049, $890? $890 that they can afford to spend on housing. Now, here's the thing with these types of questions. You always have two answers, but only one of them is the answer. Because you also have a housing expense over here on this side, don't you? What does this side say they can afford for a house payment? This side says they can afford what? $1,120. This side says they can afford $890. If you're the lender, which one are you more comfortable that they're going to actually be able to repay, $1,120 or $890? $890. That's your answer. That's what they qualify for. Make sense so far? Here's why you have to check both sides. Car payment, credit card bill. Car payment was $200, and the credit card bills were $90 for maximum housing expense. 11, what is that? What if we 1150 for a house? You still have to compare the two of them, right? On this side it says I can afford $1,120. On this side it says I can afford $1,150. Which one can I actually afford? $1,120. That's why you have to check both sides, because the answer could come from either side.
Whichever one is lower, that's the one they get.
If they're asking you how much of a payment the borrower qualifies for, it's always going to be the lower of the two, because think you're the lender. Which payment are you more comfortable that a borrower is going to be able to make? The lower amount of the two, right? Okay, so let's take a look at the examples we have here.
This is kind of ridiculous.
Go ahead.
On the 36% loan value, you minus the debt on that side, the maximum debt was $1,440.
The maximum debt, the maximum housing plus debt was $1,440. How much of a house payment do they qualify for? That's exactly right. It's sort of like our principal and interest payment when we were working on them the other day. If you wanted to figure out how much was going toward the principal, you had to first figure out how much was going toward the interest and subtract that amount out, right? Same thing here. Same thing applies here. If I have two things that are in the bucket and I want to know how big one of them is, I've got to get the other out. Right, they would have to. That's exactly right. They're either going to give me the housing expense and ask me for the debt, or they're going to give me the debt and ask me for the housing. Is everybody okay? All right. So let's take a look at then. If you go down to number 1 in the first section of your handout that I gave you. No, you don't get one. People on the front row don't get handouts. You're close enough, you just have to read it off the computer. There you go. Number 1 says calculate the maximum housing affordability for a buyer who has a monthly gross income of $6,000 and there are no other known expenses. Okay? So they have a monthly gross income of $6,000 and there are no other known expenses for this person. How many ratios do we have to check? Two, right? We always have to check both sides. So I'm just going to draw a line. So I've kind of got some division here between a 28% side and a 36% side. Okay? Yeah, that was what Ashley asked earlier, if it would always be the same numbers. In my experience on a test, yes. If they gave you different numbers, use those. But my experiences on a test, they're going to almost always give you 28 and 36 because these are the classic ones. In the real world, these numbers are stretched beyond imagination. That back end ratio on many loans now is 49%. Um, the percentages will always be listed. They'll always tell you what one, and if they don't give you one, then you assume 2836 because those are the classic ones. Okay? No, you're fine. You're fine. Okay? So, 28% side. Let's work with that first. What do we pay out of the 28% side? Just what? Housing. So we're going to write housing equals gross monthly income, which is how much money? $6,000. And what does the formula say we're going to do with it? Times that ratio, correct? So, what's $6,000 times 28%? $1,680 maximum payment for housing. We're done with the 28% side. That's all. Now we need to look at the other side, right? The 36% side. So, in this case, housing plus debt equals $6,000 times what? 36%. So housing and debt equals $6,000 times 36%. So housing and debt equals $2,160. Now, go back to the question. Calculate the maximum housing affordability. Well, on one side, I've got just housing, but on the other side, I've got it sort of convoluted up, right? It's mixed up with debt. So what would I need to do? Subtract the debts, right?
Can't you just go with the one?
But in this case, there are none. So what am I subtracting? Nothing. So, question becomes, which one can I afford? 1680 or 2160? Which one can I afford? If you're the lender, which payment are you more comfortable that somebody's going to be able to make? $1,680. Which payment are you more comfortable? You're the lender here. You're qualifying a buyer. What would be the need to check to if you want to use the higher one? But I'm saying if you would never use the higher final number if you're the lender because there would be no need to check both, right? If you were going to always use the higher number, you'd always use the 36% side. Right? We don't do it that way. That's why there's two to check. That's why we have to check both.
I went back to the way it was worded, it would say the monthly gross income, no expenses, tells me that all I'm concerned with is the 28%.
And as long as you are advanced enough that that's what it tells you, it told you exactly right. But when I'm introducing it, I want to make clear to everybody. Here's what I'm saying. Don't take shortcuts until you know the long route. You only take shortcuts when you know in advance I'm only going to need to look at the 28% side and you know why you only need to look at it. And if you're at that point, then awesome.
Just go through the process and then,
Okay? Why did it throw y'all?
The way it was worded, the maximum housing.
Right. And that's what you're always calculating is maximum affordability. But maximum affordability doesn't mean the biggest number on the piece of paper. Right? But from a lender's perspective, you have to weigh, should I make them a loan where they got to pay me back $1,680 a month, or should I make them a loan where they got to pay me $2,160 a month? Which one are they more likely to be able to afford? And what's the answer to that question? The lower number, 1680. 1680. So let's look at number 2. Bobby Buyer has a monthly gross income of $4,850 with a car payment of $325, student loan payment of $150, and credit card bills of $115. What's his monthly housing affordability? Well, we still have two sides, right? We have the 28% side over here, 36% side over here. So on the 28% side, we say that housing equals monthly income, which is how much here? $48.50 times 28%. So what's our maximum housing expense on the 28% side? 13 how much? $13.58 per month. Now we need to look at the other side, right? Okay. So on the other side, housing plus debt equals $48.50 times 36%. So H and D, housing and debt, equals how much? $17.46 per month. But we have to get rid of what? The debt. That debt has to go away because they ask us what is the monthly what? Housing. They want to know just that piece, just the housing piece. So we have to get rid of the debt piece. So we need to start subtracting the debt. What's the first thing we have that's debt? That $325 car payment, right? How about the student loan payment? Is that debt? Yep. How about the credit card bills of $115? What do we come up with? $1,156 available now for housing. So we have two answers. We can either afford $13.58 or we can afford $11.56. Which one is the lender more comfortable with us being able to repay? $11.56. That's our maximum house payment, $1,156. Okay? Number 3, Sandy wishes to purchase a home and she's an income of $48,000 annually. If Sandy's interested in a home that would have a monthly PITI payment of $940, how much can she afford for her other monthly debt, such as car payments? Well, the only real wrinkle they've given us here is that they gave us what kind of an income? Annual. And what kind of income do we need in our formula? Monthly. So the first thing we need to do is break that $48,000 down into 12 months. And I see $4,000 a month. So still doing the same two ratios. Over here on the 28% side, housing equals our monthly income of $4,000 times 28%. So housing equals $1,120. I just remembered it was behind me. It was the same number we had over there. And then on the other side, housing plus debt equals $4,000 times 36%, right? And that is $1,440. So H and D equals $1,440. Now, what were they asking me for here? In this case, they were not asking me for house payment. How much can she afford for what? For monthly debt. How much can she afford for monthly debt? Circle the thing they're asking you for. They want to know the debt. If they want to know debt, can we figure out anything about debt from this 28% ratio over here? No, because there's no debt over here. Debt doesn't show up on this side of the page, does it? Debt does show up on this side, on the 36% side. Is everybody okay with that? And what we know is that we can afford $1,440 for housing and debt. If you wanted to get just to debt, what would you need to do? Subtract the PIT, the housing payment, right? So we want to subtract out that $940 a month that they're spending on housing. And what are we left with for a maximum that person can afford for monthly debt? $500 a month in debt payments. Is this kind of clicking a little bit for you? Feel pretty good about it? Good. Good. So if you kind of follow along here on your handout, the only other way they can give you these questions is in reverse. Okay? And people tend to get a little confused when they do this in reverse because they don't know when to deal with the payments, before or after they deal with the ratio. If you look back at the formula is the formula. All along, they've been asking us for affordability. What kind of a payment could somebody afford? And whenever they're asking us for affordability, we were taking the income and doing what with it? Multiplying times the ratio. What if they ask us for the income? What if they say, Travis wants to afford $1,200 a month on a house payment. How much does he need to make? That's a different question, isn't it? But what does the formula say we do there? That's affordability or payment, right? Affordability is the same thing as the payment divided by the ratio. So if they're asking us for the income, we're going to be taking the payment that they want to qualify for and dividing it by these two ratios. Are we still going to check both sides? Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's look at the first one we've got in this section here. It says Thomas is attempting to qualify for a monthly PITI payment of $2,000 and does not have any other monthly debt expenses. What's needed in monthly income for him to qualify? Well, I'm still going to put my division because I still have two to check. I need a 28% side and a 36% side. Okay? So on my 28% side, they're asking me for income. What is needed in monthly income? And what does our formula tell us that we're going to do when we're being asked for income? Affordability or payment divided by that ratio, right? So what kind of payment are we working with on the 28% side? Sorry, I answered my own question. What kind of payment on the 28% side? But just housing, right? Just housing. Make sure you know it's just housing, right? So on the 28% side, it's going to be our housing payment, housing, divided by 28%. So that equals, in this case, $2,000 divided by 28%. And what do we come up with for a necessary income to qualify? Monthly income. How much is it? $7,142. 85? 85 or 6. Either way. Okay. $7,142 per month that we need to qualify. We also have to check the other side. Now, I realize some of you already said we're not going to need it because they don't have any other monthly debt, but we want to get in the habit of doing it because I want to demonstrate a point here for you. On the other side, what payment do we deal with? Housing plus debt divided by 36%, right? So those two things combined divided by 36%. Well, what is our housing and debt combined in this case? It's $2,000 because we don't have any other debt. And if we divide that by 36%, what do we come up with for a necessary income? $5,555 and 55, okay. Or 56, either way. Now, two answers. Which do you think is the answer? The higher one. Because you're the lender. You're telling somebody how much money they need to make, not how much of a payment they can afford. If you're the lender, what are you more comfortable with? Somebody that makes $7,100 a month or somebody that makes $5,500 a month? Which loan would you rather make? Somebody who makes $7,100 a month. So, necessary income to qualify for that loan is going to be $7,142 a month. And if they ask us for annual income, we would simply do what? Multiply that times 12. They ask for monthly in this case, so we don't need to do anything else. Let's look at number 2. Sally wants a monthly PITI payment of $1,580 and has monthly debt of $615. What does she need to make monthly to qualify? So on the 28% side, it's housing divided by 28%. So our housing expense is $1,580 divided by 28%. What does that equal for our necessary income on the 28% side?
$5,642.86.
Okay. $56.42.86 a month. And now on the other side, it's housing plus debt divided by 36%, correct? So, $1,580 plus $615, and then we're going to divide by 36%. So what's $1,580 plus $615? How much? $2,195? $2,195 divided by 36%. What's our maximum, or what's our necessary income monthly? So I'm the lender. Which one would I rather the borrower make? $6,097 a month or $5,642 a month? $6,097 a month. Go ahead and work on number 3. Buy your lonesome. Assume Beth's monthly PI payment is $785, and the home she wants to purchase has a yearly tax bill of $1,200. Notice, yearly tax bill of $1,200, annual homeowners insurance of $600. Beth also has a car payment of $350 and monthly Association of Realtor dues of $65. What would Beth's annual income need to be in order to qualify? What I would recommend you do is, again, make 2 columns, a 28% side and a 36% side, and start grouping everything that goes on each side. Before you even try to do any math, just start grouping things so you know what goes where. Good. Housing, right? Taxable part of housing. Insurance part of housing. So this ain't your total housing expense here. Okay? You need to add in taxes and insurance. Remember, but you need to add in monthly taxes and insurance. Good. That's a monthly PI payment, right? 78. What kind of tax payment is that? You're fine. Housing expense, right? How does housing include taxes and insurance? It doesn't. You don't have to pay you don't have to pay taxes on that house. You have to pay insurance on that house. Yes, ma'am. Before you do the division too. It'll be done right here before you divide. You got to come up with that house payment first. Good. So 930. This is 935 divided by 28%. Good. Okay. Why'd you? You forgot your taxes and insurance over here. Okay. So it should be this 935 should have carried right over there. Okay. Yep. I haven't done the math yet, but this is the right housing expense, yes. And you bring that same number over here. Where's the $1,000 coming from? Oh, it's not HOA, Association of Realtors. Yeah. No. Just take that back out. Good. That's right. So this is your housing expense. You added those together, right? And plus the debt and divided by, that should be right. So, a little bit tricky here because they didn't give you straight up the housing expense, right? If we look at these two sides, the 28% side and the 36% side, on the 28% side, we're dealing with housing, but they gave us the housing in bits and pieces, fits and starts. They gave us the PI payment of $785, but then they told us that there were annual taxes of $1,200 and annual homeowners insurance of $600. Are taxes and homeowners insurance part of our housing expense? Yes, they absolutely are. Is it $1,200 a month, though, that we're paying in taxes? No, that's annually. So how much a month are we paying in taxes? $100 a month. You had to take that $1,200 annual tax bill and divide it by 12. So we've got an additional $100 here, and so this is PI. This is $100 in taxes. And did we have to get a monthly amount for our insurance as well? $50 for insurance. So what do we come up with? $935? $935 for housing, or PI, TI. And then we divided that by what? 28%. And what do we come up with for income that we need monthly?
33.39.
And 28 cents. Okay, 33.39 and 28 cents. Okay, and we can multiply that times 12, which is
40,071.
okay. Now we need to look at the other side, right? On the other side, we start with the exact same housing expense. I'm just going to bring that 935, that PITI number, just comes right over to this side, right? Because this side is housing plus debt, right? So housing plus debt is going to be $935 a month in housing plus car payment of $350. What about them Association of Realtors dues? It's not debt. It's not debt. Not debt. Okay? So $935 plus the $350, $1,285, is that right? $1,285 in housing and debt combined, divided by what number? 36%. And what do you come up with for a necessary monthly income there? $35.69 and 44 cents times 12 equals how much? 833.33. So, if I'm the lender, how much does Beth need to make in order to qualify for this loan? 42,833. Yes.
Cents of it or different?
No, everything's rounded to the nearest dollar, nearest $10. Rounding's never going to make a difference. Yep, don't worry about that. Okay? I feel like y'all were doing well with that as I walked around and looked. Everybody feel pretty good about these? Because that's honestly as complex as one of these could ever get. And it's probably more complex than they would get on the test. Usually they will give you the PITI, but I just gave it to you as a broken down so you could get in the habit of thinking annual versus monthly. But if you can do that one, you can see what you'd be faced with on a test. Good. Good. All right, let's take a break, and then we will come back and start on valuation.
So Travis, like for me,